This is Dr. Andy Yates, and this is the Incongruous channel. Today, we're going to be talking about why you, as a citizen of the United Kingdom, or at least England, are defenseless. Now, let's have a think about how I got into this. I used to live in the United States, and I used to live in a state called Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, the town, which was right against the Mexican border, and it would rightly be called a cowboy state. Certainly when I was there, and I believe I have this correct, there was a right to carry concealed, which means you could carry a concealed weapon on you, gun. It was allowed by the law, because you know that in the US there's the Constitution. The Second Amendment of the Constitution says that you have the right to carry arms to defend yourself. And they take it very seriously. You could have a 9mm pistol inside your jacket or tucked down your waistband at the back. You could have a Colt 45 on your hip for everybody to see. You could even have a AK-47 or a AR-15 strapped across your back and walk down the street with it. I mean, if you did that, citizens would call the police, I'm sure, and they would come and they would say, because there's videos of it, they would say, well, why are you carrying that? And the person would say, well, I have a right to carry it, haven't I? And they'd say, well, yes, you do. Yes, you do. The question is, why, though? Because it's an assault rifle. Why would you want to carry an assault rifle down the high street? It doesn't make any sense. Now, do I think it's a good idea to have guns in the UK? No. Do I think that citizens should be armed up and carrying weapons and stuff? No. But there needs to be some serious thought into this whole idea, this whole concept. And I don't think any serious thought's put into it. And I don't think they, and that is the they that used to be. You remember in the old days we used to say, oh, they wouldn't let that happen, or they'll sort that out. And there's no they anymore. It's not the monarchy, it's not the government, it's not the newspapers. There's no they anymore that's going to look after us. It's just us. So we need to look after each other and make our presence as a democratic force, make it important. Anyway, so let's go through a bit of history to give you an idea of how this has happened, because it used to be fairly loose, the gun laws in this country, as it was in the United States. And that led to the Hungerford Massacre. This was in Hungerford, a guy called Michael Ryan in 1987. He had his collection of guns, a Beretta 9mm pistol, Zabala and Browning shotguns, Bernardelli .22 pistol, CZ also 3.32 pistol, and here's the big one, Norinco 7.62 39mm semi-automatic rifle, that's an assault weapon, and an Underwood M1 carbine .30 rifle. He went daft, killed 16 people, including an unarmed policeman and his own mother. Now, what happens is when something like that happens, it's a tragedy, it's awful. Think of all the people that are affected by 16 deaths, and other people might have been injured too. But the fact is that politicians then have to respond. One, they may respond because they care about the British people. Think about that. Others will respond because they politically have to, because it's important for their votability, for their next election, for whatever. They need to support any process that makes things safer for citizens. And in this case, obviously, they need to crank down on the gun laws, which they did. They cranked down on the gun laws and made sure people could only own guns in the right situations. And slowly over time, that became less and less and less. Now, here's another guy, Usman Khan. If you don't know his name, he was a terrorist, convicted of terrorism back in the day. I think he served about 2 years. Then he came out, or he may have got convicted of belonging to a terrorist group or something. When he came out, he went back to get some jihadist training from, I don't know, Al-Qaeda or ISIS or whoever it was at the time. Then he came back again and plotted with his mates to carry out a bombing of the London Stock Exchange, the Houses of Parliament, the US Embassy, and Boris Johnson's house. No comment. So the point was, he was convicted. He actually pleaded guilty, was convicted with an indefinite sentence, but they pulled that down because that seemed to be unfair. A 16-year sentence with a minimum of 8. He served 8. He attended all the right courses, rehabilitation, de-radicalization, all of this good stuff. And he was released on license with an ankle monitor. He attended a celebration of this rehabilitation force or, process in Fishmongers Hall, which is a place where they can hold these kind of meetings next to the Thames, next to one of the bridges by the Thames. He took along 2 long knives, stabbed 2 of the workers, the rehabilitation type workers, to death, and then started attacking other people. Now, there was a lot of brave citizens there who did their best to protect the other citizens and also to protect themselves, of course. One of the things they did, and this is what stuck in my mind, is one of the guys pulled down a narwhal horn, which was a kind of ornament or trophy or something on the wall. And a narwhal, as you may know, is a horned whale. And they used to be killed a lot, keep the horn, throw away the whale type of thing. But I think that now they're protected. And they're beautiful animals. They're mammals, so they're kind of unicorns, aren't they? Because they're mammals with a single long horn. Anyway, he took this thing down and used it to jab at the guy and keep him at bay. And other people used tables and pipes and things like this just to keep him at bay, and also to force him out on the street so he couldn't do more damage to the people at the conference. They got him out on the street. There was, I think, a plainclothes policeman. They got him down. Plainclothes policeman disarmed him. But he had this, as it turned out, fake explosive vest on. And he was saying, I'll detonate it, I'll detonate it, I'll detonate it. So armed police officers came along. They told the people to stand back. He said, right, that's it, I'm going to detonate it. And they shot him 20 shots. 12 of them hit him, whatever. And that was the end of that. But the point was this: that narwhal horn is, by law, an offensive weapon. The guy who used it couldn't have walked down the street with that under his arm just in case he got attacked or met some knife-wielding jihadist. No. He's not allowed to carry that. It's an offensive weapon. But he was allowed to use it to defend himself. And here's one you might find even more interesting. The guy that used the fire extinguisher, because when used in a case like that, the fire extinguisher is defined as a firearm, according to the 1968 Firearms Act. So he basically used a firearm, and the other guy used an offensive weapon. And everybody's, of course, it was a good thing. They did a great thing. There were some very brave actions carried out, and good luck to them. But there's how crazy the law is. Offensive weapon and a firearm. Fire extinguisher. It's mad, isn't it? Anyway, so that was that. Now, here's another name that you'll probably know, Sarah Everard. Now, this is an appalling thing. I think she was walking from a friend's house back home after she'd been to visit a friend. It was around the COVID time, so there were a lot of strange laws around, and that might have been used as part of this illegal process that was carried out. But anyway, she was walking back, and then she was stopped by a guy called Wayne Couzens, Police Constable Wayne Couzens, who was an armed police officer, VIP protection. He wasn't armed at the time, he was off duty, but he was kind of dressed like a sort of police officer, and he might have used his warrant card to get her in the car, perhaps something to do with COVID. Anyway, he took her somewhere, assaulted her, and then killed her. Police coffer with the Metropolitan Police Force. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, of course, it highlighted that women and little girls and stuff like this on the street, not safe. And there were protests, demonstrations, and so on and so forth, and all kinds of things going on. And, of course, what they wanted to do was have some major changes by which women and girls could protect themselves. Now, BT came up with an idea, which was the Walk Me Home app. Now, BT's kind of corporate and government, British Telecom, all that. So you think there's a good chance this isn't going to happen. And the idea of the Walk Me Home app was a bit like the track and trace, the £37 billion debacle, where it just made a lot of people rich and then did nothing. Remember that? Anyway, this was the same sort of thing. They said, we'll have this Walk Me Home app. It'll track them by GPS. And you can put in there, hey, I'm leaving home to go to such and such. And then when you get there, you say, hey, I've got here safe. That's a good idea. But it was ended up cancelled. The Home Office, Priti Patel, said, we're not going to do that. So another thing they tried, the demonstrators, the protesters, the people who were concerned about this, was to get the use of pepper spray legalised for women and girls for their self-defence. Now, you got to know, there's lots of ways pepper spray could be legalised. Because pepper spray is different strengths. Pepper spray, because nowadays the police don't use pepper spray, they use a synthetic version of pepper spray. So it's a chemical. So that chemical could be kind of diluted down a bit like this for citizen use or something like this. But nobody's tried. This is the point. Nobody's tried. Nobody thinks the protection of women and girls, citizens, is important enough to actually see if something like that could be done. They put a petition into Parliament through the the government petition site, 47,000 signatures, denied. Why? Pepper spray is defined as a firearm by our dear old 1968 Firearms Act. Maybe something should change. I actually thought maybe we could change pepper spray for something else, something that would be considered not toxic or noxious. I tried saline, and there's a couple of, if you look on my YouTube site, you'll see there's a couple of really bad little videos there where my partner and I were sort of trying this out on the lawn, and we filmed it. And I tried regular strength pepper spray, saline spray, so 0.9%, and it did nothing because it's the same salt content as your tears. She then tried a stronger version, which was seawater, 3.5%, I think, and that stung, but it's not going to stop a determined attacker who's intent on doing harm. And then I sort of gave up with that. And then I realised this rule that anything you carry for the purposes of self-defence is illegal. But as far as Sarah Everard's concerned and the women and girls, nothing changed. Now, my particular concern is for elderly people, people like me with this grey beard, white beard actually. It's not grey anymore, it's white. And because they're the least capable of defending themselves. People say there's not much crime as far as elderly people are concerned, and that's just not true. It's because the surveys that are done and the Office of National Statistics, who does surveys and everything, do it in a way that is least likely to be responded to by the elderly. The Office of National Statistics call people up. It's a good idea. But we advise elderly people, if somebody calls you up and you don't recognise the voice, put the phone down. Oh, hello, Office of National Statistics here. I don't know you. See? The other way is online surveys. Well, you've got to be online. You've got to have a computer. You've got to have it plugged into the big World Wide Web, right? You've got to have it, you're paying your fees and everything like this. Who can afford that nowadays? And you've got to sign up for surveys, and you've got to do the survey. And then we're talking elderly people here. Not likely. So that's probably why those statistics don't seem a big deal, because I would think that bad people would find elderly people a nice, vulnerable people. And you hear about it at crimes like distraction burglaries and stuff like that. But anyway, so that was my concern. I did a talk for a charity. It was kind of entertainment for them. But I wanted their opinion on these ideas of self-defence and how safe they felt. And they basically said, well, we feel fairly safe during the day to go out and down the town and stuff, but we don't go out at night. Not at all. And it's sad because when people are in their golden years, You know, having worked all their life, perhaps, having maybe served their country, served their community, paid their taxes, done all these good things, that their reward that they get end of it is to be locked inside their house and hope nobody breaks in. That's awful sad, isn't it? It's not the police's fault. There just isn't enough of them. They're not got enough resources and everything. They enforce the law. They don't make the laws. But of course, they're the first ones to apply the laws, and that's why they get blamed for it. But it's not really their fault. It's the laws. It's the government. And nobody seems to care. And the thing is, as these laws have cranked down, because you remember I talked about the Hungerford massacre and then Usman Khan and then Sarah Everard, and the laws were cranked down and cranked down and cranked down. Nobody seemed to be taking notice of collateral damage. What damage that's doing to other people. What's damage to doing to a UK citizen's ability to defend themselves if they are not, you know, a martial arts champion or something like this, if they're an elderly person who's kind of frail. How could somebody like that defend themselves? Simply they can't. You could tell them just to give over their wallet and everything, but if a bunch of bad people decide to just duff them up for fun, there you go. No deterrent. But I did wonder, okay, so all these things, we talked about illegality and the fact that it is illegal to carry anything that is to be used as a self-defense weapon. In fact, going back to Sarah Everard, at one of the demonstrations, I saw a lady, I had to say that, a person carrying a placard, and on it was a fist with keys sticking out. Right? That's illegal. Because according to a court that charged somebody for this, that is premeditation of carrying a weapon. You just can't do it. What you could do is have the keys in your pocket, and if somebody attacks you, just quickly shove them in your hand and stick the keys out and everything like this. It's insane what these laws are. They're just insane, because nobody seems to be focused on, wait a minute, yes, we need to make the laws strong. Yes, we need to make these things, but all you're doing is making the penalties stronger. You're not actually stopping it happening. Is there any way we can stop it happening? That's the key. So I went to AI, of course. Where do we always go? Bing AI I used. I probably shouldn't advertise that, but I did anyway. And they came up with a list of items that may be legal to carry and could be used for self-defense. They were very careful what they said. Anyway, and there was a whole list, but I took some of them out of there. Number one is a torch. Well, you need a torch, flashlight to see in the dark. Fair enough. Keys, we've talked about. A metal water bottle. Well, that's true. Because, you know, a pint of water weighs £1.25 pounds. I don't know what that is in metric, but it's heavy. But again, you'd have to have the physical ability to swing it. Do you know what I mean? To use it as a self-defense weapon. Would an elderly person have that? They could certainly press the top of a pepper spray, couldn't they? But anyway, going on. One of the talks, one of the ladies there, an elderly lady, said, how about an umbrella? And I thought, wow, that's actually a good idea, because we're in England, it rains, we need umbrellas. And a lot of umbrellas have a metal spike at the end. Now, all I would say with that is that would be a good deterrent, right? Wouldn't be good to stick somebody with it, but it would be a good deterrent, because it looks kind of nasty. But not that. And I guess in England, generally, you'd be okay with carrying that. But it all depends on how it's perceived. And remember, you are guilty until proven innocent, because you're carrying an offensive weapon. Pens, possibly a little pointy thing, sharp thing, metal case maybe. A coin pouch. Now that AI came up with this, and I thought, what the heck's a coin pouch? But then I thought, you remember back in the medieval times that people used to have a pouch on the side of their, think funny old skirts they used to wear and stuff like this, you know. And in there they keep coins, because there was no paper money, no credit cards. It was just coins, bits of metal, which would have weight. And there was that, you remember that movie, Death Wish, with Charles Bronson. Remember the name this time. Charles Bronson. And when his wife and daughter were attacked or whatever, and he went out to just to walk around the streets, I don't know, and he put some coins in a sock. And then somebody came to attack. This is in the United States where legality is different. Let me just pop that in there. Somebody came out to attack him, mug him or whatever, and he whacked him with these coins in the sock, and it was very effective. In fact, that's what they, in the old days, in the gangster days, they would call a blackjack, because it was like a teardrop thing, leather or rubber, and in one end it had lead shot, so it had a lot of weight to it. But I got to say, something like that could be lethal. So don't use it. It's illegal anyway, because it's a self-defense thing, and it's illegal to carry anything to be used for self-defense. I've said that how many times. But did you know, because this law kind of sneaked in quietly, that you can be charged for offensive weapons in your private home? Now, what concerns me about that, a couple of things actually, is if an officer was in your private home and they saw something that was an offensive weapon, you might not know it's an offensive weapon because you haven't memorized the long list of all the things that are offensive weapons. It's something your granddad gave you, it's something your uncle brought back from overseas or something like that. Nowadays they talk about a knife with holes in it, holes in the blade. Okay. I didn't realise that made them any more lethal. I think that's more because they're trendy. They're like zombie knives or something like that. And so that's because they're popular now that certain kinds of idiots use them. But, they want to make a point of that. You can't have those either. But anyway, but the point is, in your private home. And here's the other side of the problem. The police get a lot of stick over the laws that they enforce. But this one is like, well, because if you let an officer into your house and he just wants you as a witness for some kind of something that happened down the road, or were you around that you were around the town last night or something, right? Just as a witness. You had nothing to do with it. They just wanted some information from you. And the officer comes in your house. That is lawful entry. And that officer then is bound by his rules and his oath or whatever. He won't necessarily look around, but if he spots something that is classified, the latest classification, as an offensive weapon, he is duty bound to report it. And then you don't let the police officer in your house, which is awful sad, because I would always help the police. If they're doing something legal, which presumably they do, I would always help the police. But now you've got to ask yourself the question, do I really want to let these people in my house? Even for an innocuous reason, like being a witness to something or giving them some information on something, because they might look around and spot something. I'm just saying, this is where it's going, and it's getting pretty scary. Your own private home. There you go. But I get it, because if they arrest somebody for a drug bust in their car, that gives them the right to search that person's private home. And if they go into that private home looking for drugs and there's a machete and a samurai sword and a knife with holes in it on the table, then they will confiscate those and maybe charge for them. Anyway, there you go. But I think the point is that it's any item that might be used as a weapon can be considered to be an offensive weapon. So my T-shirt here, if I am wearing it for the purposes of self-defense, this is an offensive weapon by definition in the law. And I think it needs a particular common sense view of how the laws are and how they affect the citizens of this country, because are citizens of this country allowed to defend themselves? And most people say, oh, well, yeah, if you're attacked, you're allowed to defend yourself. Well, how? I'm a 68-year-old man. How can I defend myself as of some young person who's 20 years old, fit and healthy and all this lot, with 8 pints on board? How am I supposed to defend myself against them? Not a chance. It's not right. You know, so this is the kind of thing that needs to be looked at. And, you know, that's just what I think. Sorry, my dog's annoying me. Not annoying me, they're beautiful. I love my dogs, but she wants to go out. So we'll start to wrap this up. But that's the point. And what bothers me is that nobody's recognised this issue, recognised the fact that now citizens really have no right to defend themselves and they are guilty until proven innocent. Something wrong, and someone needs to look at it. And I don't have any clout, I don't have any influence on these things, although I wished I did in this case, because I'd like to do something about it. When I do talk to these elderly people, I see these lovely people, and I'm thinking, who the heck is looking after them? No one. No one. They hit 65 and it's like, go away. We're not interested in you anymore. Unless you vote for us, and then we kind of like you. But sad, isn't it? Anyway, there we are. Just remember, any item that might be used as a weapon might be considered to be an offensive weapon, and it is illegal to carry anything as a self-defense weapon. There, I've said it. That'll keep me out of jail, hopefully. And that's the way it is. But it's a sad state of affairs that this country has come to. And that's all I'm saying. And maybe we deserve some intelligent discussion with subject matter experts to determine if there is something that could be done, like a mild pepper spray with a registration, a certification, online training course, whatever. There must be something we can do. There must be. You can't just keep cranking down on the civil rights of the citizens of this country till they end up just locked in their houses. And even that's not safe. Okay. This is Dr. Andy Yates. This is the Incongruous channel. And you guys, please take care.